Hello, what I would like to do is to read a few poems from Soni Somarajan's first collection of poetry called First Contact. His debut collection is published by the Red River Press, the Vijayoti Sharma of Red River Press. And here is the book. As you can see, it is a slightly squarer production than your typical book, and it lends itself beautifully. This design lends itself beautifully to the collection itself because it is full of images, mostly photographs by Sony himself. Now, Sony is, as a poet, is familiar to me through the quarantine train, where he works as the creative head and he leads. He's part of the core team as a creative head, and I'm fortunate to work alongside him. And he is also a good friend. I have had a few fantastic conversations regarding poetry and craft with him. So it was a delight to hold his debut poetry collection in my hand, and uh, as I have finished reading the collection, I would like to read a few poems out loud and record them and share it on, on social media and other platforms. So here I am reading from this wonderful collection called First Contact. First Contact, as you know, is a term that is usually associated with science fiction and the idea of coming into contact with something that is unknown. And this is exactly what he is playing at. And the dedication makes it very clear what we are making contact with here. His dedication, let me read out the dedication for you. It says, "To life, for there's no greater privilege accorded to us." And one has to agree with him. There is no greater privilege accorded to us than life, or at least for most of us as we understand it. It also comes with an epigraph from Mary Oliver. "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" So it also puts the dedication page also puts the onus on us as the readers to make the most of our lives, and tell it promises in many ways to tell us a life of somebody who is strive to live fully and to capture those experiences fully. Uh, Alongside the poems, there is an afterword which is called Why I Write Poetry. And in the afterword, Sony makes it very clear what this is. This is an attempt to understand life and to capture memories that are slipping away from us on a daily basis, and to recapture moments that he has experienced in his life. And he calls it a memoir in verse, and it is a very apt description. Uh, First Contact is a memoir in verse and works very effectively as a memoir, especially because he has tagged every poem with a date. Not a very specific date, but he has tagged them with an year. So we know when each event that is described in these poems is happening, or even when he is just having a thought, we know when that thought is occurring to the speaker of the poems. And these poems are uh, not just tagged by the year, they are also tagged geographically, so we know where these experiences occur and we can visualize them much better. And as a memoir in verse, it works very effectively, because especially because of these taggings as well. So it is divided into four sections, and first section is called First Contact, and it spans the years 1973 to 1981 in the life of the poet, the first 8 years of the poet's life. So, and in second section is called Lingua Franca, 1982 to 1995, and Arrival covers poems that are tagged from 2001 to 2003, and the last 2013, sorry, and the last section, Degrees of Separation, is the shortest in terms of the uh, geographic expanse, or the time span as well. So it covers the time from 2016 to 2019, and I the each section is aptly titled. First Contact is about the first contact of the memoirists, a first contact with life itself. So being born, being raised in an army family. That those are the experiences that are being covered in this first section. In the second section, lingua franca, it's about learning. It is about gaining a vocabulary to speak about one's own experiences. And the third is called third section, titled Arrival, is almost an arrival into adulthood, arrival into a realization of the self, and finally degrees of separation is all about the sense of separation from one's own self, which, but it is also a much calmer voice that we hear than the frantic movements that appear in some of the earlier verses. It is much more static, and it is addressed to a youth to the large extent. It's almost uh, suggesting or indicating a personal separation that the memoirist might have experienced, but it's also about this separation from the idea of movement and all those that we can also see. Again, coming to the third section, arrival is not just an arrival into the adulthood, but it is also an arrival into craft, because a lot of the poems in the third section is concerned with the idea of craft as well, of writing, of poetry, finding the right words and such. Now, this is more than a brief introduction to his poems. So I would like to read a few. I'll begin with the poem Osman Sagar Lake 1, tagged Hyderabad 1978. Years later, the lake far below returns to memory, sparked by a picture of the pharaohs of Alexandria, a search for the seven wonders. At the world's top, an unmistakable wind roamed, my shirt billowing, the Bruce Lee style hair coverting with my surveying eyes. The water is stunning pea green, the Deccan sun and the breeze competing. I'm sweating one instant, cooling down the next. I roam off chasing dragonflies, those iridescent helicopters, hovering in fits and starts, my contrite flycatcher snaring them mid-flight. But soon I'm called away to where everyone is, a picnic we will preserve images of, examine 4 decades on in monochrome, a 5-year-old with his 2-year-old sister, cradled in laps on a hillside of grass with wildflowers, a flight of glass summoning paradise on earth. So this kind of sets the tone for this whole section. This is indicative of what is happening in this whole section. The sleight of glass is a photographic reference, I believe, because the it is capturing memory in a very particular way. It is summoning paradise on earth, where maybe it was not exactly paradise. So that indication of something beneath the surface of the photographs is something Sony taps into in many of his poems. And here are some of the expressions that I really like. The lake far below returns to memory reminds me of Akash Aidali's uh, postcard from Kashmir, recalling memory, the postcard of home, recalling to memory that experience, that idea of home. And yeah, so this is the first part of Osman Sagar Lake. I also very much like Osman Sagar Lake too, which takes this idea of a very specific experience into a more universalized uh, sort of experience, and taking it into the annals of history of human existence and of creation of life itself. Osman Sagar Lake 2, Hyderabad 1978. Field of humus, the earth is a bald page shaped from dust. For all we know and we don't, geology speaks of how stardust slowed as it rained through space and melded in an age of no spacemen. When most of it was intensely birthed, dust conspired to form a sooty planet. Dust we now taste in playgrounds. That's where children unexpectedly fall. So full of stunned shame and soreness, a lesson in how we began. The irony, only they must grow up to recognize the dust's aftertaste. The story of our origins, once veiled in the babble of baby speak. Yes, so the dust we now taste in playgrounds. The stardust that creates Earth, the planet itself becomes the taste at the dust in the mouth of children, and I feel like that is a wonderful image that he gives us. So I mentioned the working of the glass, the sleight of glass that Sony mentions um, in Osman Sagar Lake Part One, and this idea is brought again in this poem from the second section called "The Working of Glass." It is tagged PM Quarters, Air Force Academy, 1982. It is very evidently an ekphrastic sort of poem from a photograph, from a childhood photograph, and I have a soft corner for very well written poems based on photographs, and here is one of them. The Working of Glass. Strip away the sepia, a demi-glaze of memory. What remains is the working of glass. Light powders to black, grey, and white. The afternoon as a young father saw it. Perhaps light carried a few ideas. The pale sky, falling away of space, the releasing expanse that terraces so express so eloquently. The children look at the camera, the boy's face tilted sideways, examining, the girl, younger, shown in that regal air, often revealing who is the apple of a father's eye. There's an overbearing light plate in the corner, blurring the water tank they stand upon. Air and the sky are waiting, communicating in a fleeting way the familiar secret. Light always conspires to further its usefulness. Memory, a ruse. So here again, that idea of the photograph being some sort of conspiracy, and light itself being part of that conspiracy. And I think this collection, entire collection, is lit up with the image of light and sun, and also awash with the imagery of rain, and they work together in tandem to bring out the images of memory and silence that the poet aspires to. Here, memory is a ruse. And I'll move on to another poem because some of my favorite poems in this collection are those that talk about Sony's experiences in the Sainik school, boarding school, which is a boarding school, and I had a similar boarding school background. So many of these are very, very relatable to me as a person. And so I would like to read one from that cluster. It is called 2186. Admission day, Sainik School, 1984. The brick-red spires see off the rain's dawn attack. The road lights, the road lies stained, water bullets melting, sun caught, flanked by tall eucalyptuses, sentry-like witnesses. Father, pensive, lugs a black trunk. I'm 11, exploring fallen wet leaves. They give up steam, curling about ankles, a hungry cat. In the auditorium, hull shaped, a rustle of paperwork. Wild resin pigeons target us for aerial shit sprays. We duck. Done. I am issued a roll number 2186. Soon stenciled into my khakis by Jude Edwin Fernandez, a year senior. A four-digit number for the next 7 years and posterity. Inscribed on all my belongings, a tag erasing my name, the rite of passage to a poor man's public school. So I really, really like the experience that is described in this poem and how well it is captured. But It is a little bit adjective heavy for my personal taste, and it is slightly broken into phrases, and that makes me start a little bit on this particular one. I think it is a good poem, but yeah, this is one where his occasional tendency to lean heavily on adjectives comes to the fore. So the next poem I would read from this collection is called Thiruvananthapuram. The images in this is just beautiful, so I have to absolutely read this one. This doesn't come with a geotag because the title itself is the geographical tag, Thiruvananthapuram, 1994. The city of crimson buildings, burning alleys, and bodies bathed in adamant sweat. This city of winding bureaucracy, melting roofs, dull fans, and misted soda pops. Watch it shake out the mothballed blankets, the last minute bask as the sun dies gently on the veranda. In the wee hours of the hushed night, a rustle, a flutter too many, curtains puffed by a draught. Under the bushy blanket, the city tucks itself, listening to gunshots of slamming windows, the monsoon's tumultuous shout as it arrives. Outside, summer's memory perches on a clothesline like a row of wet crows, listening. So, those were all poems from the second section, which is one of the chunkiest and covers a larger span of his life, the memoirist poet's life, and is has some of the most stunning poems as well. And here I move on to a poem from the third section, which is called Bidding Farewell to Tag Hay Festival, Thiruvananthapuram 2010. It's dedicated to Gillian Clark, who has also written one of the blurbs for this collection. Um, she's a Welsh poet. Uh, Here is a poem, Bidding Farewell to Gillian Clark. A paper note folded in half, a hint of veils pressed into my palm. My friend, you mentioned the morning flight, your dread dressed in verse, meter, and rhyme. You are gone too soon, a crackle of static. I wonder if your jet arrows its way along those ocean currents in the Reader's Digest Atlas of the world. Your mind flying swiftly ahead, fading out of sight in distant Ceredigion, above the wash of the Mediterranean. A gentle prayer from my coastline, the tailwind to your smooth silvery fins, whispering Godspeed. And now, the final poem that I would like to read from this beautiful collection is called To That Tender Light. This is one of the last final section, Degrees of Separation. It's called To That, the poem is called To That Tender Light. Ambalamukka, Thiruvananthapuram 2018. It's a tender poem, and I think it's a very good poem to end this reading with. How heavy lies this head, looking at you in the darkness. Pale glint of light from nowhere, iris shaped, tells me you are awake. Reading this darkness is heavier. I wish there was a shape I could recognize. How much I yearn for that familiar landscape, the easy spell of loving you. The weather comes and goes, winters and summers, in a short heave of breath. There should be tears, there should be crying, but that won't come so easy. The need for answers is telltale. The wisdom of years reveals what I feel and must do. But in this bardo, there is only the knowing that I am arrested. This brokenness the only familiar thing. In what I make from shadow shape shifting, your pale face is the last straw, and anything I recognize is my pole star. I do see the glint in your eyes, but I also see the sea of still water between us, patiently opening its ears to what can't be heard any longer. So that is my small reading from my friend Soni's collection, First Contact. If you like some of these poems, I would highly recommend picking up this collection for yourself. I'll share a link as well down in the descriptions.